why there is hope and movement, as we were introduced to, in Oregon right now to change and move us away from the new Jim Crow. But while I assume most people are here because they are aware of this issue, I do want to make sure that we all start from the same understanding and give a little bit of background to the work that we're talking about tonight. And I want to start out by saying, Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, has galvanized people around the country to start thinking about this issue in really critical ways. But one thing about the book, the title, The New Jim Crow, is to remember it's not new right now. What she's talking about is that mass incarceration replaced the Jim Crow laws that were abolished in the 1960s ultimately, right? So this mass incarceration movement has been with us for a really long time, and it's going to take a really long time and a lot of hard work to dismantle it. So this is not new, but it is a helpful frame, but just to remind us that we are started down a hopeful path, but we have a long and hard ways to go. And in Oregon, just to remind folks, so in 1980, we had about 3,000 people in prison in Oregon. Today, we have 14,000 people in prison in Oregon alone. In the United States, there are 2.2 million people in prison or in jails, and nearly 7 million people in the United States under some form of correctional control. So prison, jail, probation, parole. That is 1 in 100 people in the country in prisons or jails, 1 in 31 under some sort of correctional control. That number is 1 in 33 even here in Oregon. So I want us to start from that point because we're at both a real hopeful moment and at a real crisis in the number of people that we are incarcerating and how that is destroying communities. Resources are going to the wrong places, families are being split up. And as we know, it's disproportionately impacting people of color, particularly African Americans. So, but the hopeful part is that in the last few years, we've actually seen a leveling off, and in some states, a decline in the number of people going to prison. And this didn't just happen miraculously. People have been working for decades, some of the people at this table, to change the trajectory of the number of people that were going to prison. And finally, I think it has started to take hold, in part, as I'm sure many of you have heard, because of a kind of a cost analysis. We can't sort of buy our way out of crime, and it's destroying state budgets. But nonetheless, things have started happening, right? So we've seen Eric Holder say that we need to change mandatory sentencing for drug laws. That's a really big deal. The Pew Charitable Trust now has a whole arm that focuses on controlling corrections costs through sentencing reform. Those are sort of big mainstream organizations and people, and they are doing it because so many of us, and I'm sure so many of you, have been pushing for this change for so long. In Oregon, we have local momentum as well. Governor Kulongoski kicked off the need for reforms before he left. Governor Kitzhaber picked that up. And then, by some standards, we were lucky enough to have the Pew Public Safety Performance Project come here in 2013 to help us navigate through major public safety reform. And that happened, and Joanne was saying to me earlier, there were some things that certainly didn't happen for those of us who really work on criminal justice reform in Oregon. Measure 11 is the thing that is on the forefront of our minds, and we did not get that in this session. But what we did get is really significant. We are if we stay on track, we will flatline prison growth for the next 5 years in Oregon. That means it's actually going to dip, our prison population will dip down, and the savings that we're expected to generate during that time is, over the next 5 years, is $300 million. This is it's significant. I mean, this legislative session, had that bill not passed, we would have started to build Oregon's 15th prison in Junction City. So this is really an incredible opportunity to break off our love affair with prison building and sending people to prison. And so I want to explain a little bit about what that bill did without getting into the weeds or going way over time. The bill, through some sentencing reforms, flatlined prison growth, created these savings. And now, over the next 2 years, there's $15 million that each county gets a portion of to reinvest into local solutions, right? So addiction treatment, mental health treatment, reentry services. And the critical thing for all of us right now, and for us to be paying attention to, is every county's got to get it right. If we're going to flatline prison growth over the next 5 years, we have to get those calculations right. And so we, at my organization, Partnership for Safety and Justice, are watching how those counties are making those allocations and figuring out how we're going to hold people accountable to make sure they do it right. Because this is kind of, you know, a once-in-50-year opportunity to set us on a different path. Wow, did I talk way too long? And I'm going to have to skip a lot of what I wanted to say. I guess I'm going to say two things. One, another piece of legislation that passed this session that I think is important to note was spearheaded by Senator Chip Shields, which creates racial impact statements for new crime bills. So it's a way to really analyze whether or not crimes are having a disproportionate impact on communities of color. We don't know exactly what that bill will do practically, but what I know, and I'm sure all these folks who worked out the legislature know, is that a conversation about race in the criminal justice system is long overdue, and I think that that piece of legislation is going to help us. So finally, I think we are on the right path, and I'm getting the 15-second line, and we just need to be, as I started out by saying, it took a long time to get here, it's going to take a long time to move back from it, and we need to be vigilant in our effort, make sure Oregon gets it right, and be on the lookout for the next incarnation of Jim Crow.